In my experience coaching new real estate videographers, I've seen this one same mistake repeated over and over. You guys are overdoing it. Trust me, I know. I'm scrolling Instagram too, and I'm seeing all the crazy real estate video trends with special effects, transitions, captions, and sound effects. Even as a veteran, the new stuff is hard to keep up with, so I understand why some of you guys are feeling overwhelmed. But that doesn't change the process of learning new skills. You still need to focus on fundamentals and build from the ground up. At this point, I've shot over 500 property videos, and to this day, I still follow 4 key fundamentals on every shoot. So if you're serious about mastering real estate videography, then take a deep breath, slow it down, and pay attention to what I'm about to say, because I promise it'll impress your clients and make your life easier. So my 4 fundamentals are image, stabilization, composition, and flow. So first up is image, and here I'm talking about the technical camera settings like exposure, white balance, frame rates. Nobody cares about that sick speed ramp you did if your shot is out of focus or the white balance is off. So here's what you need to know. Set your frame rate to 60 frames per second. Most modern cameras can shoot 4K at 60 FPS, but even if you only have 1080p, that'll be just fine. Next, your shutter speed should be double your frame rate to create natural motion blur and make your footage feel cinematic instead of choppy. So if you're shooting at 60 frames per second, the shutter should be 1/120th, or the closest you can get. Most modern cameras also can handle high ISO, so crank it up until you see some noise and then dial it back a few stops. Running a high ISO will also allow you to shoot with a higher aperture, which helps keep things in focus. Now for my focus settings, I actually prefer manual, because autofocus tends to hunt as you move through rooms. And a pro tip here is to turn on peaking so that you can preview what's in focus. Next up is white balance. And personally, I leave my white balance on auto. If you're having issues with a Sony camera like the a7S III or the a7 IV, then try using the custom auto white balance setting that I'm showing here on the screen. Now the main issue we'll get with auto white balance is if the lighting changes when you're moving from one room to the other. And to fix this, I'll usually just start inside the room where I want to finish. I'll cover the lens so the white balance will adjust, and then I'll just walk backwards to get the shot. All right, so last up is the picture profile. Should you record in log or not? If you're a beginner, I'd recommend starting with a standard picture profile and then working your way up to log. If you do shoot in log, just be sure that you've got the preview settings turned on to display the correct contrast. For Sony, this is called Gamma Display Assist, or you might want to load up some of your own preview LUTs so that you can see the correct image while you're shooting. Now, once you dial in all these settings, just program them into a custom memory on your camera. Then all you need to adjust on each shot is your manual focus, your aperture, and sometimes your ISO. And I know if you're hearing this for the first time, it might sound like a lot of settings to remember. So I put together a PDF that breaks down all my camera settings. This works for Sony, Canon, whatever you're shooting. You can just copy my settings, and I'll have that linked down in the description. So the next fundamental is stabilization. And to get those buttery smooth shots, you're gonna need a gimbal and you're gonna need good technique. Okay, let's start with the gimbal. You don't need the most expensive one on the market. However, you do need to know how to balance it properly. At first, this definitely feels complicated, but once you've mastered it, it should take less than a minute. But even the best balanced gimbal means nothing if your technique is bad. And that brings us to the Ninja Walk. The Ninja Walk looks like how it sounds. You should keep your knees bent, your elbows tucked, and step heel to toe like you're trying to move in silence. What you're actually doing is absorbing the shock through your legs and providing a stable platform for the gimbal to do its job. You also want to be mindful of your pace when doing the Ninja Walk. Once I'm moving, I try to carry my momentum until the end of the shot. And if I make a misstep or get a bump in the footage, I'll start over and redo that shot. Moving on to the third fundamental is composition. The most common mistake I see when videographers start shooting on a wide angle lens is putting it too close to furniture and objects. See, a wide angle lens creates distortion, and that distortion gets more noticeable as the lens gets closer to an object. Other than that, to create good compositions for your wide shots, you'll need to consider 3 things: distance, focal points, and depth. For distance, you need to back up. I always try to start each shot from the furthest wall or a corner, which allows me to move further for the entire clip. But if we're starting backed up, we also need a clear focal point, something that naturally draws our attention where we can land. For example, in a bedroom, try to keep the bed in the center of the frame. In a living room, this could be the coffee table or the fireplace. And in a kitchen, center the island or the sink. And lastly, more as bonus points, try to add depth. I always try to start outside the door frames and move through them, which creates a nice foreground depth. But this can also come into play when we shoot detail shots. Don't make that mistake of just getting closer to the object that you want to get a close-up of. Instead, you want to step back and use a lens with a longer focal length, like 35 or 50 millimeters, and then put something in the foreground, maybe a wall, and that should help create depth. This one tip alone will help elevate your videos from amateur to pro. So to recap, we want to back up to create distance, don't get too close to objects to avoid distortion, and center a clear focal point in every frame. Create depth by adding objects in the foreground, whether that's doorways for your wide shots or blurry walls for your detail shots. Every videographer is familiar with using a shot list. And with real estate, we can just follow a template because every house has the same components. Once you memorize the flow, you'll be able to move quickly through shoots, and you'll be less likely to forget any shots. Now, my template is super simple. I get 3 drone shots, one flying in towards the house, one flying out away from the house, and a top down showing the roof and the lot lines. Then with my gimbal, I'll start with a front exterior shot from the driveway. I also usually do a shot through the front door, but if that doesn't work, the first shot can just be in the living room. I like to move through the main spaces, including the kitchen and dining, then bedrooms, bathrooms, and finally the backyard and any additional spaces. Now within that flow, I'm usually shooting 2 angles per room. And that's because if a square room has 4 walls, we show 2 walls with 1 shot, and we showed the other 2 walls with the second shot. I usually push in for the first and then pull back for the second. This also makes the movements feel natural, as if you're touring the property in person. Another option is to try a straight on shot where you can push, pull, or slide it from side to side. Now, I'm not saying that you can't break this mold, but if you're just starting out with all the different things your brain needs to process, it's just better to follow a formula until you can shoot it from muscle memory. I like to say, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. And trust me, once you've had enough shoots under your belt, you'll naturally start seeing more creative opportunities to build on. So that's it for this video, guys. And I promise if you practice these fundamentals, shooting high quality real estate videos will become so easy that you might even get bored. And if you're already bored, then that's your sign that you're ready to move on to the more advanced shooting and editing techniques. If at any point in your journey you find yourself wanting community, coaching, or in-depth training resources, then be sure to head over to fulltimerep.com and check out what we've got cooking over there. And if you're enjoying the free content, then be sure to hit subscribe and add notifications because I've got more on the way. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.